If you want to survive an EMP, the first thing you need to do is assess your current location. What will your neighborhood look like 3 days after an EMP, 3 weeks after an EMP, and 3 months after an EMP? Remember, an EMP means the end of civilization as we know it. Without power, cars, or computers, we'll have no police, no grocery stores, no municipal water, no sewer services, no fire, no EMS. If you're in a metropolitan area, the images we've been watching from Venezuela of looting and food riots, those are all going to be happening in your neighborhood within the first day or two after an EMP. 3 weeks into the crisis, cities will be filled with the stench of rotting corpses. Without water, you can survive roughly 3 days, and the majority of the population has no idea how to filter water, purify water. 3 weeks after the EMP, people in the cities with no survival skills will have either died of dehydration or waterborne illnesses. The people who are still alive will be either those with survival skills who've prepared beforehand, or the hardcore criminal element who've taken what they need by violence. You do not want to try to ride out the aftermath of an EMP near a major population center. Must do number 2. Decide where you're going to ride out the chaos. After assessing your current location, you have to decide if you're going to be safe in that location for the foreseeable future. If the answer is no, you have to develop an alternative plan. This is a huge task, so start thinking about it now. Do you have friends or family who live in a rural location that you could go to within 24 hours? Remember that you probably won't have a vehicle unless you own a car built before 1980. Even then, you want a contingency plan. If you're planning to stay in your current home until D-Day, you'll have to bug out the second the EMP hits, because your window of opportunity to get ahead of the chaos will be very short. I would expect cities to become violent in the first 24 hours and more rural areas to break down within 3 to 5 days. So if you're planning to travel a long distance, a bike is probably your best option. Make sure you're riding your bike regularly and that you're keeping the tires filled with air. Bugging out to locations more than 100 miles away shouldn't even be considered. A big problem for many is that they work in the city and they can't uproot their family, which would cause a major personal financial crisis. And doing all of that for a threat that may never happen. If that's you, consider moving to the suburbs. You'll have to pay for it with a long commute, but your reward will likely be a larger property at a lower price. Hopefully you'll be able to find a home with more room for storing supplies and a bigger yard to plant fruit trees and start a garden. You can stock up a year's worth of long-term storage food, ammo, clothing, first aid supplies, and toiletries that aren't susceptible to the climate. Since a storage shed isn't climate controlled, stick to things that won't be affected by extreme temperatures. If you stock up shampoo and it freezes outside, it's probably going to bust and make a mess when it thaws out. I did a show on food storage last week, so if you missed it, go back and listen to it for great tips on food storage. Finally, stock up on seeds of foods that grow easily in your area. Do the research now while you have YouTube and the internet. Start a small garden now, just to start learning what the challenges are that you'll have in trying to produce your own food. The learning curve is steep, and if you wait till game day, you probably won't make the cut to the 10% that survive. Must do number 4. Figure out how you're going to get water to the place where you've selected to ride out the mayhem. It's impossible to store enough water to survive long term. You have to find a reliable water source. If you're near a lake, pond, or stream, figure out how you're going to filter the water and purchase the filters and materials you'll need. If you have a well, either for your house or for irrigation, you can have a hand pump installed for around $150, everything included. That's the pump, the base, and the installation. The least reliable source of water would be a rain catch system, because there you're dependent on the weather for your very survival. You can purchase food-grade 55-gallon barrels either online or from Craigslist to catch the runoff from your gutters. But this water still needs to be purified because you don't know what the birds have been doing on your roof. You'll need to store as much water as you can every time it rains because you never know when the next dry spell is coming. Must do number 5. Secure your retreat. Regardless of how far you are, desperate people are going to come knocking. If you're planning on taking others in, make provisions for them now. Do not alter your plan after the EMP happens. Obviously, you'll need the proper weapon systems to fend off attacks and looters. You'll need enough people to maintain a 24-hour guard. One more thing that I want to give you, and we'll think of it more as a bonus tip for surviving an EMP than a must-do, but you want to think about bartering. You don't want to, this isn't something you want to depend on. You want to have all your supplies, all your food, all of your weapons, your ammo, your clothing, everything that property that you're planning on riding out the chaos. But inevitably, things are going to come up and things are going to arise that you absolutely need to survive, that either it broke or you ran out or it was stolen or it molded or it was ruined or something went wrong in your plan. So you have to have something for contingencies. And for the most part, you want to stay on that property and go out as little as possible, because every time you go out, you're taking a risk and you're putting yourself in jeopardy, you're putting your team in jeopardy. And so the safest place to be is at your secure facility and just holding down the fort. And so the safest place to be is at your secure facility and just holding down the fort and not leaving. And that's the same in just about every disaster.